Sup, y'all? It's me. It's your boy Asmongold, and with Nighthold right around the corner, I think there's a lot of people out there who are looking for a raiding guild to raid with in a new tier. And maybe if you're not looking for a raiding guild, you're looking to make your own raiding guild. And I think this would be a perfect opportunity for me to make a video on what I think really goes into making a successful raiding guild, and also, equally as important, what I think really goes into maintaining a successful raiding guild. Now, I am going to be focusing mostly on raiding guilds, but you can apply this advice to PvP guilds and also to a number of other types of guilds if you choose to, but the emphasis here is going to be on raiding guilds. And also, I do want to say that I'm going to be kind of excluding the tail ends, right? I'm not going to be talking about, evaluating Warcraft logs, parses, hours after raid if you're in the top 1% guild, and I'm also not going to talk about, should you bring somebody's girlfriend or something like that to a raid if you're like super casual guild, right? I'm going to kind of exclude those tail ends and just focus on the majority of players, that probably like the inside, the probably like 95% of people, right? And I think this is going to be useful for a lot of people, not only, as I said, the guild leaders or raid leaders or officers, but also people who are looking to join guilds like that, because if you join a guild and you don't see a lot of these things present, these are going to be relatively basic, right? But a lot of people don't know them, but they're going to be relatively basic, and if you don't see these in the guild that you're joining, these should be red flags to you to watch out, because obviously you don't want to have to look for a guild twice. So I'm going to start this video off at the very, very beginning, right? At the absolute, for whatever reason, you're not in a guild and you want to make your own guild. And I think the biggest question that you have to ask yourself at this point is why? Why do you want to make your own guild? Do you think that everybody else is stupid except for you? If you think that, you're probably going to have a bad time. The odds are, I think that if people think that, they don't really understand what's going on. So before you try to join and make your own guild, you should try and figure out what other guilds are doing right and how you seek to improve on that. The second thing that you want to ask yourself is, what are your real goals with this guild? Are you trying to make a very serious raiding guild? Are you trying to make, a guild for you and your friends to raid with on the weekends? Are you trying to make a guild that maybe raids a couple of nights a week and, you kill bosses whenever you can? Or where on the spectrum do you want to place yourself? And I think that's very important, because if you go into something with expectations and then you don't communicate those expectations, or you don't at least put those down in some sort of a, I guess, like, for lack of a better term, a mission statement of what your goals are going into this guild, I think that you're going to have a lot of problems, because people aren't really going to know what to expect going into it. So you should make sure that you have exactly what you think needs to happen and how you think it needs to happen communicated to all of the people who you're making the guild with. And as a general rule, whenever you're making a guild, try to name the guild something that somebody wouldn't be embarrassed to have over their head all the time, right? And this kind of goes without saying, but I see a lot of stupid-ass guild names out there. And stupid-ass guild names are great, I've made a ton of them, but the odds are, whenever you're trying to make a serious guild and you want to have people who aren't, like 15-year-olds on Ritalin in the guild, you don't want to make your guild, Goat Sex Birdman or Purple, right? You want to make something that makes sense and that people can remember, that's easy to spell. That's very important, so don't use any alt codes or anything like that. The reason that's easy is so people can search for your guild later on and type it in and, /who to talk to an officer. There's a lot of reasons why you don't want to make your guild hard to spell. Keep it short and sweet as a general rule. Now, if you're in a PvP guild, obviously you want to do everything in all caps and misspell a rap quote, as you guys probably know. But if you're trying to make a raiding guild, try not to make something that's completely obnoxious, okay? If you make something that's obnoxious, you're probably going to get people in your guild who are obnoxious, and that's probably not going to be fun for the majority of people. Now, if you're making a guild, you should not make a guild unless you have enough people who are going to be in that guild to sign the charter for you. And I think you need like 4 or 5 people to sign a charter. So if you don't have at least 4 or 5 people that are willing to build this guild with you, you probably should keep looking for those people before you actually make the leap. And the reason for that is because once you actually make the guild, it's going to be so much pressure on you, and if you don't have other people to kind of delegate those responsibilities out to at the beginning, it's going to be really overwhelming, and you're probably not going to be able to do enough. And whenever that happens, you're going to have a lot of other people who are kind of they're going to join your guild, and they're going to see like, yeah, there's nothing really going on here, and then they're going to leave, right? So it's very important to make sure that you have solid people in there who actually know what they need to do, and you communicate that to them ahead of time. So whenever you make your guild, get those 4 or 5 people in there and build up that core, and that's going to be your officer corps. Now, make sure that you communicate the values of the guild to that officer corps, so even in your absence, they have the framework to make decisions in the same way that you would have, so there's no real discrepancy of, one guy makes decisions this way, but another guy makes decisions another way. That's going to create a whole bunch of chaos, and you want to have, one team, one dream. And I think that's very important, so make sure everybody is, I do apologize, I have no idea why somebody's riding a motorcycle around at 2 a.m. But anyway, one team, one dream. Make sure that everybody's on the same page and they know exactly what they need to do. Now, the main roles that you need for your officer corps, there's going to be 3 main roles, and then there's going to be like ancillary roles that I'll talk about in a minute. You need a guild leader, you need a raid leader, and you need a recruitment officer. Now, the odds are, and my advice to you, is to make sure that those are all three different people. And basically the responsibilities for each of those roles is your guild leader is going to be kind of the interpersonal guy, and he's going to, you can do like a good cop, bad cop, where the guild leader is the good cop and the raid leader is the bad cop. So the raid leader calls somebody out, then they can talk to the guild leader about it later on, and he can make him feel better about it. We used to have a guild that did that. It worked really well, but that's kind of more of a meta thing. And if you're new to doing this, I would not advise doing any psychological like brain magic like that or anything like that. But also, the guild leader is, for lack of a better term, the keeper of the flame. He's the person, if that's you or the person that you made the guild with, that person is going to be the keeper of the flame, the standard bearer. This person represents the guild. This person is the guild. This person hopefully cares about the guild a lot, and they're not going to let it fall to shit. So you want to have a guild leader, okay, just to hold things down. You also want to have a raid leader. Raid leader obviously organizes raids, decides strategies, and decides when you're going to raid, and basically evaluates players, decides if they're good or not, who to bring, who not to bring, and basically just leads the raids. It's pretty simple. Evaluates problems, decides what to do about problems, and deals with it, right? And then the third role here is a recruitment officer. Now, recruitment officer, it's very, very simple. They just recruit people into the guild. Now, all 3 of these roles are equally important. The reason that you need a guild master is obviously so people can have somebody to talk to about the guild. The reason you need a raid leader is so the raids happen, and the reason you need a recruitment officer is also so the raids happen, because there's going to be people actually in the raid. So for an effective raiding guild, I think that you would need about 3 to 7 officers, and I'm going to be saying this for like a mythic guild or a very high-end heroic guild. Any sort of a guild, like basically use something like a 1 to 5 rule. So for every like 5 people that you have, in the guild, have at least 1 officer for every 5 people. And obviously, there's kind of, like it can go back and forth, but as a general rule, you don't want to have more than 7. That's going to go into kind of like the too many chiefs, not enough Indians. You don't want to have like half your raid be officers or anything like that, because then it turns the officer corps into kind of the in group, and then everybody who isn't in the officer corps isn't part of the in group, and it creates a clique, and that creates a lot of other problems. Now, other roles that you could have as officers, you could have healing officers, ranged officer, tanking officer, melee officer, DPS officer, and these are sometimes like interchangeable, right? So like range could be DPS officer, etc. Somebody who maintains the guild website, somebody who maintains the guild bank, all that kind of stuff. And, like somebody who's like a backup raid leader, or somebody who makes strategies, all that kind of stuff. And those are different roles that you could have in your guild if you choose to. But as a general rule, raid leader, guild master, recruitment officer. Those 3 people, if you can have that, you're going to be good to go. Now, recruitment is probably, I can't really say it's most important because they're all 3 equally important, but recruitment is extremely, extremely important. So I'm going to talk to you guys now about what I think you really need to do to recruit quality people into your guild. Now, the best way to recruit people into your guild is through connections and through friends, right? Somebody is less likely to leave the guild if their friends are in the guild, right? So if you get somebody's friend from their other guild into the guild, the odds are, since this person already has a personal connection to the guild, they're going to put a little bit more into it before they decide to jump ship. And also, besides networking, besides, personal connections, going through all those, the next thing that you really want to do is you want to make pug raids. And this is going to be whenever you're first starting to make your guild, you don't really have a ton of people, and you want to build up your ranks, and you want to actually build your own guild, and to where you don't need to invite extra people. So what you want to do is you want to make pug raids where it's about 50-50 50-50 guild members and 50-50 pug members. And the reason for that is because whenever you do that, you're going to see the players in that group, the pugs in that group, you're going to see how they perform in an actual raid setting with people in your guild. So you're going to see if they die to fire, you're going to see if they try to pad DPS meters, you're going to see if they're obnoxious, you're going to see if they complain, you're going to see basically how they act in a raiding environment. And so if you go in there and you find somebody who's performing well, maybe they don't have a guild, or maybe they're not really very attached to their guild, send them a tell afterwards as a recruitment officer and say, hey, do you have a minute? And, do you want to talk with us about maybe joining our guild? And, give them the pitch and see if they'll join. And the more of those runs that you do, the higher chance you are to get people that are going to join your guild like that. And oftentimes, if you make a really, really good run and things go super smoothly, you might actually have people ask you to join the guild themselves. So there's a lot of really big positives about that, and also you of course get the raid done to begin with and you get more loot. So it's completely positive. Now also, this is a little bit harder to do with a weaker guild, a newer guild, but you can also check WoW Progress, or there are a number of other websites. I don't remember how many of these are active right now. I think Warcraft LFG is a newer one. I think I did an interview actually with the people who made that. And then there's also WoW Lemmings and other places for people who look to basically find a raiding guild. And so you could even go around Dalaran and just find people who are ungilded and just send them a tell and say, hey, if they're good, by the way, don't invite people with blues. But if they're good, say, hey, do you want to join the guild? And then bring them to a raid and see how they do. And if they don't do well, kick them out or put them to social rank or something like that. And that's the next thing I want to talk about. Actually, didn't even think about this, but guild ranks. So guild ranks are very important, and it kind of helps people establish the hierarchy of the guild and what to expect from each person in a guild. So the ranks that you should have is you should have a guildmaster rank, you could have an officer rank, now you can have a guildmaster alt rank or a raid leader rank or something like that, but you basically want to have a guildmaster rank and an officer rank that encompasses your officer corps. After that, you want to have a raider rank. My advice is not to make any sort of a rank that's a pseudo officer rank, right? Because the reason for that is that a lot of times that can kind of be seen as favoritism. Now, for my guild, what we do is we do a loot council rank. And because we do loot council, so we determine who gets loot. We don't have DKP or anything like that, roles or anything. We say this person gets this item. And because of that, obviously, there can be some people who could be frustrated. Obviously, whenever there's an item that drops, there might be two people that want it, and the person who doesn't get it might be a little bit frustrated. So having a person in there increases it makes it a little bit more transparent. So it's not like the officer corps is just giving themselves items or anything like that. And it gives people a little bit more transparency and allows them to participate a little bit more in the process. Oftentimes people that we promote up don't really participate in giving the items out or anything like that, but they're at least present and they see how we make decisions, and it gives more of an illusion of, not really illusion, I mean, we are fair. I would hope people would think that in my guild, but it gives the idea and it projects fairness onto the guild. So my advice is, unless you're doing a loot council rank like that, do not have a super raider rank, a, let's say, uber raider rank for people who used to be in my guild back in the day. Only have officer ranks and then raider ranks, okay? Class lead ranks are not really as important now because you're not doing 40-man raids. My advice is have a binary officer and raider rank. Don't have any in between. It can very easily turn into favoritism, and it can create a lot of problems of, why am I not in this rank because I'm performing better than this other person, right? So do not do that. Also, so you're going to have your raider rank. Under that, you're going to have alts, and that's basically just people who have other characters, right? Like I have other characters, that's the alt rank, and you can also have social rank. Social rank is kind of just for people who want to join the guild but aren't actually part of the actual raiding core, right? So you're going to have people who are somebody's brother, somebody's mom, somebody's friend, or something like that, and those people can be in the social rank, and they help build the community of the guild. Now, also, for that's basically what you want to have for the ranks. Now, there's a little bit of leniency there, but my big rule that I want everybody to understand here is that do not try to make a favoritism rank that you get promoted up to by being a good raider. I feel like that creates two tiers of raiders. All raiders are equal, but some raiders are more equal than others. Very, very bad system. Only have one raider rank. Everybody is on the same playing field. And once you get a little bit more serious, you can add an applicant rank where you trial somebody, or applicant or trial rank where you trial or have somebody apply the guild. And so you're going to see how this guy turns out before you actually promote him up to the raider rank. And I think that also works pretty well also. But basically, going back to recruitment, the last thing you can really do that kind of goes without saying, but it's also like really kind of cringy, but it works sometimes, is that you can just advertise via trade chat. I mean, a lot of times it's a bunch of like bullshit in there and spam about like account sharing services, or somebody's mad at somebody else for whatever. But occasionally, you can actually get your message out there and maybe find a few people that way. Also, you can do it through the general chat of the raid. So like you do it in the general chat for Emerald Nightmare. You could have people in there who are like, man, fuck this group right now, and then they see your advertisement and they're like, I'll just send this guy a tell and see what happens. So you never really know what's going to happen. Always have something like that you can post up, but also you don't want to spam it too much to make people basically have in their mind that your guild is synonymous with being annoying. So the next thing here is, not everybody in a guild in the game starts out at 890 item level. And so I want to talk about player development. Now, player development is whenever you see somebody in a raid who's performing well, who's motivated, who wants to succeed, but doesn't necessarily have the tools, aka the gear, or maybe they're newer players and they don't understand all the ins and outs of the game. They don't have the tools to really get there yet. Sometimes you can take on project players or project raiders, or development raiders, like whatever you really want to call it, long shots, whatever. You can take those people into your guild and you can build them into being an actual legitimate good player, and those people are going to be very, very attached to the guild, because that guild is what empowered them to get to where they are. So if you find a very moderately skilled for their gear level, highly motivated player, try and talk to that person and think, hey, say if you want to join as a social rank, you can go ahead and do that, and maybe you can move up to a raider rank after you played with us enough, or you get enough gear. So it's very, very important to do that. And I think also going into that, inviting people to social rank, it's very important, especially as a new guild, you want to make sure that you're not running a dead guild. So that means that if at any given time, I think at any given time outside of like 4 a.m., at any given time, there should be at least maybe 5 to 10 people online in your guild. And the reason for that is it gives people a community. A lot of people play WoW to kind of be part of something bigger than themselves. And I think that was one of the big strengths of guilds, especially back in the 40-man raiding days, is that you were really part of something that was bigger than yourself, and you were part of a community. So the more people that you can invite into your guild, and this doesn't mean invite 50 people, so 50 people are online all the time and you're spamming a bunch of bullshit, but obviously there's some gray area, but invite quality people into the guild so they can find people to play with, and so they can ask their guild, and so they can actually be part of a guild. They can have that guild experience, and you can't have that guild experience if there's only 2 people online at any given time. So just try to invite people who aren't annoying, who are just nice, and build the guild that way, so again, people don't log on to be in a dead guild. Now, the next thing here is, once you've actually gotten a lot of people in your guild, you've maybe done a couple of raids, you want to establish what your goals are. Why are you a guild? What is your guild about? What are you trying to do? Are you going for server first? Are you going for top 10 on the server? Are you trying to kill bosses before the next patch? Are you just trying to kill bosses, period? And once you establish what those goals are, the next thing you need to do is communicate those goals to your officers, and then also, secondly, communicate those goals to your actual, to your raiding team, or to your team of whatever this is. This is like an RBG team or whatever. Make sure that you communicate those goals to that team. And I think that a lot of trouble in guilds has really been caused, in my experiences, has been caused by people that have 2 different expectations, right? So if everybody goes into it and they have the same goal, it's a lot easier to find common ground and to work together. But if you have 2 different goals, it's going to be a lot more difficult to actually find that common ground and actually work together towards something that's important, and something that's meaningful, and something that matters, right? So it's actually killing a boss. If you have somebody, one person wants to parse highest in the world and the other person wants to kill it in a certain amount of attempts or whatever, you're going to have a bit of butting heads. So you want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. You want to make sure that everybody knows what is expected. And I think that's the next thing that I really want to talk about, is communicating those expectations. Because if you're a server first guild, you're going to have to raid at certain times. So if you're going to be raiding every Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, for example, that's what my guild does, you want to make sure that that's communicated to all of the other players. If you're expecting them to have flasks, you want to make sure that's communicated to all of the players. If you're expecting them to be in voice chat, make sure that's communicated to all of the players. You guys see the pattern here. So make sure that you have an expectations, and also set rules, set expectations. Don't do it too early, okay? Like if you're making a new guild, there's like 8 people in the guild, and you're talking about rules for the guild, you're going to come off as an asshole, right? So again, there's a lot of gray area here, and there's a lot of kind of, if you're going to be good at doing this, if you're meant, I guess, like to be like a guild leader or something like that, you're going to know when to do this stuff and when not to. So I'm going to kind of, there's no real hard and fast rule of when specifically you should say and when specifically you should do certain things, but these are just general guidelines. So communicate those rules and make sure those rules are understood to everybody, and make sure that if somebody breaks those rules, the punishment, I guess, or the repercussions for breaking those rules are universal. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of people who expect to get preferential treatment, and one of the most toxic things to a guild is preferential treatment. You don't want to have any favoritism, because not only does it show the people who are getting the favoritism that their expectations are lower, but it also shows the people who are not getting the favoritism that they're not as important and they're not part of the team in the same way. So it's completely toxic to the team, it's completely toxic to the guild, and you never want to have any sort of preferential treatment. You never want to have any sort of, favoritism, any of that shit. Never have that. I mean, obviously, you're going to have instances where something could be maybe seen as preferential treatment, and again, you've just got to deal with it on a case-by-case basis, but try to make sure that you treat everybody as much as the same as possible. Now, the next thing is creating, I guess, more of a community. So my advice would be, as soon as you actually get maybe a few people online and everything, go ahead and make a Discord server or some sort of place where people can come together and actually be part of a community outside of the actual game. So where they can talk with each other. So like I think the best advice is like a Discord server, Mumble server. I don't even know if they have vent servers anymore. TeamSpeak server, something like that, where people can actually come and talk to each other and create those bonds and become friends. Now, you can even make a guild website, but my advice with that is that unless you're actually planning on being a very serious raiding guild, you're probably not going to need a guild website. And as long as you have some sort of a Discord server where everybody can come together and share ideas, until you actually get into like mythic progression, there's going to be no real need for a guild website, in my opinion. But you can always do it if you like to do that. If it's like a hobby of yours, like website development's a hobby, obviously you can do that. But if a guild isn't very serious, people aren't going to feel the need to actually be compelled to log onto the website or to even make an account about it. So again, I want to get back to what I was saying about communicating expectations. Make sure that people know when to raid, how to raid, and what happens if you don't meet those expectations. And those 3 things should be communicated, and everybody in the guild, it doesn't matter who they are, well, I mean, I guess if they're socials, it doesn't matter, but if they're in the raiding team, everybody should have the same idea of those 3 things. If there are different ideas going around with those 3 things, you're going to have a ton of fucking problems. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, and this is kind of my last point, which is going to be kind of a tangent to an extent, but it's very open-ended, which is how to deal with problems. Now, some of the big problems that guilds run into are underperformance, negative and toxic players, and also just apathy. So those 3 problems are, in my opinion, the killers for 95% of guilds. So dealing with toxic players, it depends on how somebody's toxic. Like if you have somebody who's like yelling in vent, who's very obnoxious in vent, who's purposely trying to annoy other people in vent, and I just say vent, but I just mean like voice chat, right? So Mumble, Discord, TeamSpeak, whatever. If somebody is actively trying to be toxic, trying to be rude, trying to get a reaction out of other people, that is a toxic individual, and you want to get them out of your guild as soon as possible. There's no reason to have somebody in there who's trying to make things unpleasant, okay? And I mean, really, whenever you condense it down and you crystallize it down to this person is trying to make somebody else have an unpleasant raid or have an unpleasant day, do you want somebody like that in your guild? Of course not. No, you don't. And it's more important to get toxic people out of the guild like that, even if they are high performers, and oftentimes those 2 things do converge. So make sure that you get rid of toxic players individually. Now, whenever toxic players get together, you can have what I've made a whole video about called cliques. Now, cliques are whenever there's maybe 3 or 4 people in the guild that, they're in their own private chat channel, they don't get an event, they, are in Skype during the raid, and my expectation, okay, as somebody who's been in those private chat channels, in those private Skype calls and everything, every single one from my experience has always been they're in the chat channel to talk shit about the other people in the raid. And is that good for the team? Does that help the team? Whenever you've got 4 people in another chat channel saying bad things about everybody else? It's not. It's never good. It's never good for the team. You want to cut that shit out. You want to nip that shit in the bud. If that happens, kick out a few people. If the other ones leave, good riddance. If they don't, well, at least you avoided, losing even more of them. You don't want to have any sort of negativity. You want to have everybody on the same page, everybody with the same goals, and everybody generally being okay with each other. If you have a person, this is a rule that I've used with recruitment, and I think that everybody else should use this. It's a mantra, I guess. People that have problems are problems. So if you have somebody who joins the guild, who's had problems with 8 other guilds, and every other guild, people are out to get them, and then they're going to join your guild, what's the chance that people are going to be out to get them in your guild too? When you're the common denominator, you're more than likely also the problem. So whenever you have people that have tons of problems with other people, they can't get along or whatever, just get rid of them. Just get rid of them. There's no reason to deal with somebody like that. This is time that you're spending as an officer or a guild leader dealing with somebody who obviously can't deal with other people themselves. And at a certain point, a certain amount of interpersonal, skills and relationships should be expected from a guild leader, but also at a certain level, at the same time, individuals should be expected to be able to handle themselves. And being able to draw that line and know whenever somebody is doing too much, they're being too ridiculous, or they can't handle things, and also at the same time knowing whenever you need to resolve a dispute is what differentiates a good guild master and a guild that's going to be around for a few weeks or maybe a few months from a guild that's going to be around for a few years. And it's very important to make sure that you know exactly. You don't invite people into your guild that actively have problems with other people in your guild, and also that have actively had a lot of problems with previous guilds before. So try not to do that. And again, it's all about really trying to avoid negativity. So if you have somebody in your guild who's always complaining about somebody else, you have somebody in your guild who's always saying that we suck, if you have somebody in your guild who's always basically like shitting on the guild or whatever else, you've got to tell them, like, man, if you fucking hate this guild so much, why are you in it? Right? Like, that's what I've always told people. Like, why would you be in a guild that obviously you're not happy raiding with? And even for their sake, maybe you should try and get somebody else and replace them. You're not doing them any favors by keeping them in a guild that they obviously don't like, that they're being negative towards, and you're also not doing the entire rest of your team any favors by keeping somebody in the guild that lowers their morale and makes them unhappy. People play this game for fun, okay? Maybe I don't, okay? Fun is for casuals, but for a lot of people, they play for fun, and you don't want to have this person log on to just get fucking shit on by some other guy because he is not happy with the way the raid is working. A lot of times people can have legitimate concerns. Talk to them about those legitimate concerns outside of raid time. Deal with those. But in terms of actual raid time, you should have one directed message, and that's we're going to succeed and we're going to work towards succeeding. Anybody who's trying to subvert that message should be removed, and that's all there is to it. You have one team, one dream, one band, one sound, one raid, one goal. That sounds good. Yeah, it sounds good. Just made that up. But anyway, hopefully you guys liked it, and hopefully it makes sense too. It's very important to make sure that you have a unified goal and you're all working towards that same goal. If you have anybody who's trying to subvert that goal, remove them. It's really all that simple. So I think that's really what it takes to make a guild. And again, there's a lot of maintenance that goes into it, making sure that you log in, you maintain a presence in the guild as officers and as a guild master, so people don't think that they're in like kind of it's just wild world and they just log in, there's no officers and nobody knows who to talk to for different stuff. But try to I guess like find the gray areas. And I've said this a lot, it's not really a cop-out, it's just the truth. There's a lot of things that there are no real specific hard and fast rules for. You need to know exactly what to do, when to do it, and it's going to take a lot of intuition, it's going to take a lot of experience, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And you have to be ready for that, and the odds are the first guild that you make and the first times that you go in there, you're going to fail. Get used to failing. You're going to fail a lot. But the important thing is that after years, after months, after a certain amount of time, however long it's going to take you, you will succeed if you want it. And I think that these I guess like these mantras, these bits of advice in this video, I think is going to help you a lot of the way in terms of what you really do need to do. And these are just guidelines, okay? But I feel like guilds that don't have these guidelines, guilds that don't follow this, are going to have a lot of trouble. So I really hope that this helped you. I've been leading and making guilds for over 10 years. So I've got a little bit of experience, and hopefully I pass that along to you. So if there's anything else that you think that I missed out on that you think is important, go ahead and let me know in the comments. I'd be glad to read it. Maybe if I ever make another version of this video, I'll include that next time. But thank you very much for watching, and like, comment, and subscribe.